have as parent role, bringing up my kids and now my grandkids. So education is important for sure. And I thought the talks hit on some points that are definitely worth considering.
Mm-hmm. Well, is that something you feel like you want to explore, or is it?
I'm okay with that. It was kind of, as I read along through that, I thought, oh yeah, this is all real familiar stuff. And I remember this when I was a kid, and except that for me, about when I turned 7 or 8, with the school, the school the grade school I was attending had an agreement with the university that was in the town that I was in, where they were doing work with testing. So every year we got tested by, a major testing for, the whole school system tested, and we all got our grades out. And so, which, when I look back at it now, I see what they were doing. I didn't at the time. It was just like, oh, okay, we have to take a test. But the thing about it was what I learned out of that was how to take a test.
Right.
And I ever since then, I don't have to even know anything about it. Mm-hmm. To be able to, do pretty well with it, okay, especially in the kind of, choice kind of things where you get to pick. Well, okay.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because, I think we're all in that age group where the standardized national tests were given and you were ranked in percentile, and it wasn't just against kids in your class, it was against the whole country. Yep. Going through how to take the ACT and, how to score well, how to, this kinds of things I'm sure you were learning, Paul, of, if when in doubt, pick C.
Right.
But yeah. I guess I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and let me just share a few thoughts with you. I'm interested in doing something, especially right now, along the line of what the folks were doing in those videos, is kind of express these ideas. I was involved in education for, my entire career. I started teaching when I was in college. I was actually teaching high school class, and I've been in the classroom, taught Head Start for a while. I was in prison teaching, and I worked in the business school at U of L. So, my whole background, it's given me a chance to think about what people do in schools and why they do things the way they do. And it is a way of scraping off, the top performers. The whole system is designed to filter out the elite few who can succeed in professions, whether that's law or medicine or engineering or whatever it might be. And they have used the college structure that's been around for a long time, which really did not have that purpose for the most part. Before people in our age group went to college, most people who attended college were legacy students. They were the sons, sometimes daughters, of people who had gone to those colleges. Big state universities were relatively small in population. So within our lifetime, we saw that expand tremendously. And at the same time, we began to look at how we approach public education, what we do with the vast unwashed who normally would not have gone to school beyond 8th grade or maybe high school, but now are suddenly being compelled to go to college. And we've gotten ourselves in kind of a mess because colleges were not designed to do what we're asking them to do, which is to train people for professions. Unless you are in medicine or law or some very structured and traditional field, if you're in IT, for instance, which is a major source of jobs, there's very little in university. When I was at university, I worked for the University of Louisville, I was, who was I? I was a self-taught computer programmer. And I ended up teaching the PhD folks there at the business school how to use personal computers. So it really was this ironic thing where this barely competent individual from the outside comes in and deals with the upper level faculty. So the schools are going through a lot of struggles now to, adapt and cope with, how do you take this old system, the old traditional college system, and how do you apply that across the entire society? And I think, in my opinion, they're attempting to do the wrong thing. And I'm particularly interested now during the pandemic in seeing if anyone is now thinking of a different way of doing basic education. And I have some ideas about it that I tried out when I was at Trinity, and I was back reviewing it a couple of days ago. Just to summarize very, very briefly, for me, it means individualizing. Every student has an individually designed program. And we can use technology. What I used with my students were student portfolios, where every student basically had a website, and the website was where they put their work. And I had them designing, one of the things I did was I asked them to design a course to teach something they knew. So I had a huge variety of things. Kids would teach you how to dribble a basketball. Kids would teach you how to, cook breakfast, to fire a shotgun, to cast a line, fishing, whatever it was they were interested in. And we had them do videos and instructional materials to teach their fellow students. So I was attempting to get the students involved in teaching. And I still think that's a great idea. And I don't know whether anyone has used the pandemic as an opportunity to pursue these alternative ways of doing things. I hope that we don't just go back to the old style without rethinking it. I think we're at a juncture where we could really do something different. So, Steve, I was intrigued. I did watch part of the show you recommended on Halt and Catch Fire, and that took me back to that same kind of feeling, like this is a new thing. You gotta quit thinking the way you were thinking before.
Exactly.
And you got to think of a different way of putting two and two together. It comes out differently. So that's sort of where I am with it, and I'd love to hear your response to some of those ideas and any ideas of your own.
I thought from the videos that Dustin recommended, the idea that maybe you shouldn't be trying to train students for careers, that you should be training them to be curious, become self-taught, be able to work with their peers in teams, get feedback from teachers, get that this, and I think your idea about personalized, individualized is very important for many reasons. What's your culture, what's your learning style, what's your level of maturity, and your knowledge base. So there's a lot of things that are very individualized, and then absolutely students who have some kind of problem, like the ADHD, or just they're too introverted, or anything that is going to hinder their progress needs to be identified and dealt with. So I think the more you can know where the student is as an individual, the better off you're going to be able to reach them and teach them. And I think the role of the teacher, when you're talking about things changing, the role of the teacher really should change. It shouldn't just be a lecturer and a grader.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the teacher role has evolved within our lifetime to be something that I don't think it was ever intended, to be. It seems as though whatever societal problem comes along, we expect a teacher to be, well, let's deal with it in school. Let the school handle this. Drugs, sex education, whatever it might be,
right.
Health and safety issues or whatever. And we keep piling things on to the teachers where, as a teacher, I sometimes wondered whether, does anybody really know what I'm here for? You think I'm here for, to be your child's savior somehow. I'm just here to teach them how, I know how to do something. I'll show them how to do it. I'll give them feedback on it, or I'll coach them along, and then I say goodbye to them. And, it's as any other professional, I do my job and they move on. But somehow we've evolved this to the point where parents are just relinquishing some of their own responsibility and saying, well, this is going to happen in school. I don't have to talk to my kids about sex because they'll do that in school. I don't have to talk to them about drugs because they're going to handle that in school. And so we put these unrealistic expectations on them. And now teachers, I think most teachers are at the point where they really don't expect success. They don't expect, even the teachers at a school like Trinity, they don't expect the students to really succeed. Some of them do, and I think some of the kids would succeed whether they ever went to school or not. That's another part of it. But I don't think we think of teachers in the right light. We expect, any more than your doctor is responsible for your health. Your doctor can tell you what to do, but your doctor can't follow you around and make sure you're getting exercise and dieting and so forth. That's up to you. It's your deal. Mm-hmm. Paul, I want to particularly hit on you because you strike me as someone who's a lifelong learner. You've picked up things through your life, at least the time I've known you, that new things. You learned Spanish suddenly, and you learned flamenco dancing. For God's sake, you've expanded your horizons, even after age 60. Is that learning something that was always present with you? Is that the way you were at, say, age 15 or 20? Picking up and deciding your own course for your own education?
What can I tell you about that? Very good and well, I have long considered the internet to be the world's greatest source of how do you do things, how do you fix things, where do you go to get something, and all that. So that seems like to me that the problem for anybody who's approaching the internet is to learn how to ask the questions. Learn how to, what kind of questions do we get? And as far as how about doing, I've been doing this my whole life. I'm always looking for something, and the internet was like a blessing. Mm-hmm. Being able to find things. Before, I would get out of work, get a book, get a magazine, a dictionary out, trying to figure out how to do something, look in there, see if you got a picture. Now you get video with somebody explaining it to you about how to apply it. I just think, wow, this is great. I can get that taken care of. Things like, well, it's true with language. I'm kind of booked up to the point that I can't take any more languages on. As soon as I get a little free time, I'm back to Spanish again because I really like to listen to this language. And you can hear authentic speakers at any point. Mm-hmm. These people who actually, whatever, pick your type. You want Spanish from Spain, or Spanish from Mexico, or Spanish from Cuba. They're all different.
So it sounds like what you're saying is some of the old strategies for doing something like learning a language are now obsolete, that there's no need to do that. And I wondered out loud to some teachers one time. I made the mistake of doing this in an English department meeting, but I questioned the value of reading. I said, I think we put too much emphasis on reading. Not that reading is not an important thing, but it's not the only way in which people can get information. It's not the only way people can learn. And I think today, the visual part of it is much more present in most students' life than the written word. Written word has deteriorated into, short text messages. Very few people, and I'm a reader, so I don't say that it's obsolete. What I'm saying is the emphasis is wrong, and we we say, well, we're going to test, we're going to give you a test, a standardized test. What do you need to be able to do to take that test? You need to be able to read well and fast. And you need to be able to scan. That skill in and of itself will allow you to score higher on a test. One of the biggest issues that I heard from teachers was from science teachers, that we would have in a standardized test, you had basically reading, English topics, you had math, and you had a science section. Well, the science section was just another reading quiz. If they would give you something to read, and then you'd have to respond to it. So if you knew how to read, even if you weren't very good at scientific inquiry, if you knew how to read, you could do it. It's like you said, in terms of learning to take the test. I learned how to take a science test. Didn't know all that much about science, but I knew how to read. So, but I think that's something that the schools have failed to acknowledge, that their students are not getting their primary education from books anymore. It's not happening. Steve, do you find that something that your kids like mine, I guess, are a little older. What about your grandkids? How likely are they to look at something on a screen as opposed to opening up a book?
Well, my granddaughter is 7, and my grandson's only 3, so he's not there yet to be able to evaluate. But for my granddaughter, my daughter and son-in-law kept her away from screens as much as possible, probably until the pandemic, when her schooling was conducted by screens.
Right.
At that point, she got an iPad. But she is oriented towards reading the books. That's something, because she's just a beginning reader, I think that's something she really enjoys. At the same time, now she's developed those screen skills. She knows how to swipe and pick an option and she was instructing me when I was having Zoom calls with her. She was instructing me on how to make it work, because she's learned how to do it with her first grade class. So I do think it'll be a different learning experience. And to Paul's point, there's so much out there. If you learn how to explore it, you can find whatever suits your interest and learning needs. So I think the kids will just take that up naturally. The ones who have parents who are helping, parents or siblings or somebody in their life outside of the school system to help them through the little steps you have to go to master those things. So the learning, you're right, doesn't just take place with the teacher in the classroom. It's a whole extended part of your life. And of the kids' play is just learning in a more enjoyable format. So,
right. One of the struggles we always encountered in curriculum design and development was the I don't know, the conflict perhaps, but the weighting of content versus I don't know, process, I guess is the best way of saying it. That are you teaching a student how to learn about history, or are you indoctrinating them about certain facts in history? That what is the most important thing for the student?
Like a lot, I think you have to have a balance, don't you? Can't understand history without a few framework facts. If you just start reading a history book randomly, it's too much, So having a little bit of a story to take these sub stories and put them in. And I think that's the same thing with science. You have to have a little bit of an overview of what's going on with science. Then you can take little parts, fit them into the big picture.
That's reflected in the way we go about. Well, in college, it's the 101 course. You take a 101 in any subject, and you're doing a broad survey. The problem is if you do that without the in-depth study. You know, if you study history by looking at famous dates and what
Right.
what when,
Right.
never delve into biography and an in-depth analysis of history. You really haven't. You may know a lot of facts, but you haven't really learned
Right.
history. But I don't know that there are any facts that are so critical that they must be learned. And that was a theory within my lifetime. There was a group that was trying to say, well, here are all the essential things that an educated person needs to know, and we're going to line them all up, and we're going to make sure everybody knows all those things. They've done that in mathematics for years, and they structure a mathematic program as though everyone who begins to study mathematics is going to become a PhD candidate eventually. And so you have to learn all the steps along the way. And I've always argued that's a false premise, that, you know, the future PhD in math candidate is going to do that on their own. For most people, it's not important to know how to extract a square root. You know, it's just not critical. You know, especially with computers, you don't need to do that anymore. Why would you want to, you know, add a column of 50 numbers, 6-digit numbers?
Well,
why would you want to do that? That's
well,
not necessary.
I can say at 56 years out of high school, I've never had to use sines and cosines on anything that I've done.
No, very little use of triangulation.
Right.
Trigonometry, I loved it. Good in school was great, but I got no use for it.
Right.
Now the question comes to me, and this is what I was thinking about, Michael, this whole thing too, is you know, is the school system there to help the students, or is the student system there to take care of the surrounding adults who are making money?
Is this just a place to keep your kids while you're out working?
You're out doing the money thing. And you know, we're talking about the caste thing, which is important, because every time I'm around now where that pops up in the situation, I can clearly see how it works. You know, it's just really kind of redefined how I thought about a lot of things around interaction with people, and the whole caste idea. Being as I am definitely in the subordinate class by virtue of my not lack of wealth, I'm higher up by virtue of my education. I mean, you know, a lot of different things are at play, but as I've said before about here where I live. So Steve, did I pass this one out there for you? This is just I live my backyard is backed up to the Louisville Country Club fairway.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And so you know that the people that are walking by my house in the backyard are all people that got lots of money,
Sure,
a lot of clout, and you know. So that whole thing is, as I said to somebody else about that, I said, when I moved here, we were living out in the country. When I moved here, I said they all outed me right away. They knew right away. They knew right away that I had the wrong kind of clothes on. And my spouse, who grew up here, she was like, "Okay, we'll fix this up so you at least blend in." And so it's kind of interesting to see this process, because I know that for people who don't, or haven't run into this before, this has got to be a very, mostly just to make you mad because people don't treat you right. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been snobbed by somebody who was, they thought they were like, we're the guys with all the money, get out of my way. Those kind of people that piss you off, and yet what can you do? And so I've been trying to think about how to think about the school system and the caste system. And I think that the school system is built to feed the caste system.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you can teach people some stuff and they can occasionally get somebody useful out of it is kind of irrelevant. They really just want to be able to deal with all these people that they've got coming in that they got to do something with and process them into the system. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Michael? as an idea.
Well, I've often compared school systems to hospitals. And if you ran a school, or if you ran a hospital the way we run a school, everybody would go to the hospital. Or, at least in their early life, they go to the hospital every day. And they would have an extensive number of tests every day, both the ill and the sick. And if you were really, really sick, they'd throw you out of the hospital. If you had, you were on death's door, they didn't want you in the hospital. And if you were very, very healthy, you got the best room in the hospital. I think it is a caste system in the school, and it favors, and it's rewarded by those folks in charge of the school who have been successful in the system themselves. We very seldom find a teacher who flunked out of high school.
Right.
That would be the ideal person to deal with troubled students, as somebody who had gone through that trouble themselves. But we don't do that. We assign the teachers to people. At any rate, I don't want to dwell too far, but I do think that the structure of the school is to maintain that order and in society, and we're going to reward people who know how to follow directions and are willing to take orders and are willing to submit their own personal desires to somebody else's yardstick, somebody else's goals. And if you do that successfully, you can eventually get a PhD. That I always kind of chuckle under my breath about people who have PhDs in education. Man, you are really willing to take a lot shoved up your butt. You have to be really submissive to get a PhD in education, because it's not. It's such an ill-defined field. How do you become an expert in doing something that people don't know how to do? So,
yes. Well, and going back to your point, Paul, about the caste system, if a caste system is set up to allocate resources to the upper caste, then we've set up a great system in the U.S. Using property taxes to fund our elementary and grade schools, because the poorer neighborhoods can't afford to spend that much on the students, so they get less of what they need to succeed in the caste economy.
Yeah, deliberately.
Yeah.
Deliberate act. Yeah.
It's like, let's take the people who have a lot of money and put them in neighborhoods where they can pay for schools and teachers that will help their kids stay in neighborhoods that have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Reinforces it all the way down the line.
Yeah, it's
they get real good at kind of hiding that fact from the ordinary citizens.
Yeah. But also, let's go back. You take it from the point of view of the parents. I want my kids to get the best education, because education seems important from both aspects of them just becoming full people, using all of their capacities and growing. And then it's also important in terms of fitting into a working economy. That education still is a card that opens doors for you.
You want to, and God forbid, you don't want to be last.
Yeah, well, but how do you make it more egalitarian, right? So, you want your kids to be able to have the advantages, but we want all the kids to have the same advantages. So maybe it's like Lake Wobegon, or
all kids are
what is it? All the
women are strong, the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. I remember that.
Everybody's above average, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I observed in my teaching career is that schools reward those who are already successful. They set up the system of rewards based on who was successful coming in, and if I were to redesign something, I actually asked a principal this toward the end of my career. I said, you know, what I would like to do is teach all of the students in a grade level. I want to teach all of the freshmen. Now, this would be about 350 kids. So I'm going to teach them all. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my course online, and I'll set up the criterion for completing this course. And you can complete this as soon as you like. You can get extra credit for helping other kids complete this. And when you've completed the course, you're free to go do whatever else you want to do. That you don't have to sit here after you've completed what I've asked you to do. You're no longer obliged to be in this class. So you want to go sit in the cafeteria or go to the library or go to somebody else's class or whatever it is you want to do. And I said, well, that way, what happens is the kids who are successful and get through it don't have to stay. And I can focus my time on the kids who really need my help. That if I have 25 kids in a class and I can have 10 of them opt out, I've now got a class of 15, which is a whole lot easier to handle. And I don't know if you've had that personal classroom experience, but I've taught classes of 40 plus, and I've taught classes of 5 or 6. And
Big difference.
It's a different thing based on the numbers.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, as I was saying about the analogy of the hospital, if you can get the healthy kids out, you know, triage this. So we get those kids out. You know, you understand enough about English literature to move on here. And I want to deal with the kids who don't have that. And what this also does, this is something I observed in college. If you are one of those privileged kids, you have probably been to a play. You have probably traveled in your life. You have probably heard other people speak different languages. You've had experiences that are part of your education that many other kids haven't had. So one of the functions of the school, to me, would be to provide those experiences for kids who can't get them on their own. You know, we reward the kids who are already successful, and we want to take credit for a kid making the honor roll or getting a merit scholarship or whatever. Whereas, you know, they did that on their own. The school didn't do that. They were already there. We should measure our success based on how high up we've elevated the lowest scoring kids. But anywho, I want to. I'm going to try to extend this conversation. There's some people I really would like to have some influence on, and that's the group of teachers and administrators who have been doing school by Google Class or Zoom or whatever, and have had now some real experience in working with kids online. And I want to encourage them to articulate what's good about that. Don't complain about, well, it's not as good as being in the classroom. I've never claimed it is, but there are some positive things about it. And so I want to try to solicit those. If you know any teachers, or if you talk to your kids about your grandkids' experience, whatever it might be, I'd like to get more information. Every time I run into a teacher, I ask them the same question: like, what's happening here now that you might want to continue? And I think I told you about my personal experience. My grandson, my 10-year-old 4th grade grandson, has done much better in this environment than he did in person. And that's because he's a smart kid. He was bored. And the teacher would always direct the class towards the kids in the middle, or, kids who weren't getting it. He would get bored very easily, and he would start doing something else, not pay attention, get in trouble with the teacher. And, it was snowball from there. Now he does his work. He gets finished with it. He plays Minecraft. He does when he's done with that, and he's very good about it. He watches the schedule, keeps a timer on, does exactly what he needs to do. And there are a lot of kids like that. I was like that in college. Like, tell me what I need to do to get a B. I'm not trying to get an A. Tell me what I need to do to get this, and then get off my case. Let me do it and get out of here. And there are a lot of kids like that don't want to be the the teacher's best friend or anything like that. They want to do the work and be done with it. So, anyway.